Do you affirm that the information you're about to give is true?
I do.
State and spell your name for the record and also provide your address.
My name is Elizabeth Reevy Miller, Elizabeth Rue, V as in Victor E hyphen Miller, Miller. I live at 9288 Blue Wing Terrace in Blue Ash, Ohio. So for the past 3 years, I've been frustrated by Duke and the Ohio Power Siting Board's response to our concerns and vehement opposition to Duke's Central Corridor pipeline. Despite the fact that this project has received thousands of letters and comments against it, both Duke and the Ohio Power Siting Board barely acknowledge the very valid concerns for safety, and I don't understand it. I started my career at P&G in consumer and market understanding, and P&G's mantra is that the consumer is boss, and we valued what they had to say. When we were debating decisions, a common question would be, well, how do the consumers feel about this? From the top down of the company, the corporate culture was one of valuing consumers and treating our relationship with them as an important and valuable partnership. It has become clear to me that that culture does not exist in the upper levels of management at Duke Energy. In fact, I would describe the attitude of Duke management towards their customers as one of contempt. People who oppose this pipeline project are a barrier to Duke getting their way. As a human being who has been fighting this project for the past 3 years, I feel abused and violated by Duke. I've seen them use nasty tricks like disguising legal notifications as junk mail to depress opposition to the project. At their open houses, they send people on wild goose chases to get answers to their questions, which they know will never be answered. And their written materials are designed to mislead. Here's one example. The propane peaking facilities were installed in the 1960s. They include valves, compressors, pipelines. From that, you might conclude that the valves, compressors, and pipelines were installed in the 1960s, but that's not the case. You'd be wrong. Every document is like that. You have to tear it apart to even understand it. And it amazes me that a company like Duke, with millions of dollars of resources, would resort to such underhanded tactics. But I'm even more disappointed with the Ohio Power Siting Board because they have the duty to look out for us. The staff report was shocking. They described our very valid concerns as a high level of interest. Real people could be burned and people could die. The Ohio Power Siting Board did not leverage learning and recommended practices that had been developed by PHMSA after the San Bruno tragedy. These are all directed at preventing another San Bruno from happening in a high consequence area like ours, and I don't understand that. PHMSA, and they have a risk modeling group, have recommended many approaches for identifying and quantifying risk, yet none of these approaches have been applied by Duke or insisted upon by the Ohio Power Siting Board staff. In fact, it appears to me that Duke does not want to assess or quantify risk, particularly up front in the planning stage, because then they would be required to do something to avoid or minimize that risk. And Duke would rather approach it afterwards, where they rank order the risks to the company once the pipeline is in the ground, when it is too late to make safer, more informed decisions. So I'm including a paper here which is entitled Approaches for Preventing Catastrophic Events, that was prepared for PHMSA in 2016, and it would be really helpful to the public if Duke and the Ohio Power Siting Board would become familiar with the information in the report and follow some of the recommendations. Now, despite safety precautions, accidents involving pipelines like this happen all the time, and industry bad behavior remains unchecked. There is insufficient oversight, and the consequences for bad behavior are so small that they are not a deterrent. Duke was recently fined $10 million for failing to protect our energy grid. and Duke of Ohio's 2 subsidiaries across the river have both received serious integrity management violations in the past year. And yet we're supposed to trust Duke when they say they are confident that they can safely operate this pipeline. Duke has not demonstrated that a pipeline of this size and scale is needed. The propane peaking facilities that it's supposed to be replacing are used only a few days a year. This is an irresponsible use of ratepayer dollars and an unnecessary safety burden to our community, particularly when there are alternatives available, which neither Duke nor the Ohio Power Siting Board has adequately investigated. Duke has used statistically invalid forecasting methodology to support this project, according to an independent audit, which the Ohio Power Siting Board did not mention or consider. If Duke or the Cincinnati Chamber of Commerce are anticipating market growth from this project, then that they should be providing valid database volume forecasts to justify it. Building a pipeline and hoping that it will lead to growth is not a valid reason for the project. The needs of 1 or 2 business customers at the expense of thousands is not a justification for the project. And finally, very little attention has been paid to